January 30th, 2020 board meeting to order. First on the agenda is a pledge led by board member Lisa Moore. Thank you, Ms. Moore. I want you to join us in a moment of silence tonight, and we'd like to remember longtime Rutherford County teacher, assistant principal, Mr. Ivan Duggan. I had the honor of working with Mr. Duggan for several years. He's a great guy. He always had the students in mind in anything that he came up with. So if you'll join us for that. Okay, thank you. Okay. Approval of agenda. Have a motion? Thank you. Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next by law has to be the extension of employment contract for the director of schools. This time I'm going to ask Mr. Spurlock to let us do this, and he can rejoin us after this is done. Thank you. Next thing I'd like to do is ask Dr. Jimmy Sullivan. He's going to come up and give us a report on things that have gone on in the last year or so.
So thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Board, for allowing me this opportunity to speak. Really just want to take a couple minutes and talk about kind of our vision currently under the direction of Mr. Spurlock. First, everything starts with our students. But when we're empowering our students, we're also serving our teachers. And so when we're empowering our students, we're absolutely empowering our educators at the same time. Under Mr. Spurlock, we are also very interested in increasing educational opportunities for our students. And lastly, I would argue that one of the things that we're very much focused on are ensuring that we are using our taxpayer money and ensuring the fiscal impact of everything that we're doing. I'm expound upon each area just a little bit more. So first, when we talk about empowered students, that starts with our leadership. You know, the data shows that principal and school leadership accounts for 25% of student growth. And when we think about the building level leaders that we have, and we have many of them here with us tonight, that's been an area that has been a large focus for us. Our administrators run very large schools, arguably some of the largest schools in the entire state. And focusing on that development and the support that they have has been phenomenal. And whether it's looking at our principal PLCs and how we support those, or also we are now, Dr. Anthony and I just started our third straight cohort of aspiring administrators, to where we have 30 to 40 individuals within our county that are interested in being assistant principals that we meet with in a very rigorous 7-week course. We will be starting our first aspiring principal cohort in the fall of 2020, to where current assistant principals will ask them to come and then meet and go through a training so we can not only train our assistant principals, but train our principals. Another vision that was supported by this very board, and we thank you very much for that, was having a high school specific team. Our middle school and high school have been largely within our instruction departments, supported by 2 or 3 individuals, even though that was roughly 2/3 of our entire student body. And so this year we added an elementary specialist, a math specialist and an ELA specialist for our high schools, and the impact they've been able to provide under that direction from Mr. Spurlock and approval of our board has been second to none with the impact. Next, after of course with school leadership, you talk about teacher leadership. Some of the things that we have really focused on was moving that vision of RTI and focusing on student support from Tier 2 and Tier 3 to focusing on Tier 1 instruction and reorganizing our instructional coaches and ensuring that they are building the capacity of our teachers. We currently have about 430 teachers. I was meeting with them at 4 o'clock, and will not tell you how quickly that I got here from Rock Springs Middle School. But we have over 400 educators at Rock Springs Middle School right now. As Mr. Spurlock mentioned yesterday, we gave our first district benchmark assessment in approximately 10 years. They are analyzing as a group. They are meeting together, sharing each other's data with each other, whether it is third grade math or high school U.S. history. They are meeting together and discussing that data for individual student growth. And that's something that has been an amazing thing to see, and I appreciate all of their hard work. The other part of that is I know that we sit here and we talk about testing. Testing is not something that we just love to do. But as long as student opportunities are tied to testing, it's something that we have to make sure that we're paying attention to, because we want to make sure that our students are not denied opportunities because of performance we're not preparing them for. The last bullet point was really talking about a fiscal impact. And so we all understand that we ask a lot of our tax-paying citizens and out of our county commission. One of the things that Mr. Spurlock asked us to really look at this year was to investigate just about everything we do with instruction and see if there are ways that we can save money. I'll give you a perfect example of something that came to light. We use a kindergarten Phelps screener. To put it bluntly, I believe the copyright date on that, I was probably screened on that going through this district several years ago at Walter Hill Elementary School. And so that is going to be a way that we'll be able to save funds, as our teachers are going to create our own kindergarten screener instead of outsourcing that for an extra one. We're really looking at trying to make sure fiscally we are not just purchasing things to just purchase them and simplify roles for our teachers so that we're not just buying the next big silver bullet. The silver bullet is our educators, and that's what we have to focus on so that they can provide support for our students. You know, in closing, I have been in educational administration since 2010, roughly. I have had the pleasure of working for 7 different directors of schools in different roles. I am a systems person. I believe in the system. The system always has to be successful regardless of who is in charge. When I think about things that I've learned under director of schools, Mr. Embry in Bedford County taught me about staffing. Mr. Odom taught me about TVOS. I just shared that message with a group of teachers. But under the direction of Mr. Spurlock, of course, my role allows me to have a much more interest in that relationship, as we are much closer than I have been with those others due to my role. But the direct impact that Mr. Spurlock's vision makes, not just on our instruction department, but indirectly on our teachers and principals, is second to none. And I would echo that and hope that our educators across this district have really felt empowerment this year. Thank you, Mr. Estes.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Back to number 5 here. It says, extension of employment contract for the Director of Schools. The Director of Schools employment contract currently expires June 30th, 2021. Recommended approval. Motion to extend the Director of Schools contract 2 years.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Have a second?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, has anyone had a look at this contract? Because it was not in our packet and it was not online under the agenda. So basically the information that we have is what's right here. We're about to vote on something we have no idea, especially the 2 of us are new on the school board.
Yeah, but we do have an idea. The contract says right here, the employment of the Director of Under Contract shall commence 1 July 2018, shall extend until June 30th, 2021 for a term of 3 years. The board shall consider the issue of whether to extend this contract on behalf, before December 31, 2020. However, the board reserves the right to extend the contract at an earlier or later date, should the board so determine.
That's fine, Mr. Chairman Evans, but I'm new to the school board and I haven't even looked at the original contract. That has not been provided.
It's on file in the director's office.
Is that, I don't think that that's my responsibility to have to do that, to go to the director's office to look at that. And that should be public record.
Whose responsibility would it be to do what board members are supposed to do? That would be yours.
Who told us? I mean, whose idea was it to bring this up? I was not on the school board then.
Chairman,
And
we had a work
typically-
session last night, and if you had any questions, you should have brought this out in the work session last night.
Well, I got to looking today, to looking through our package, which most of us do, after the work session, and there was no contract in there.
Again, I think you should have asked last night to get that contract.
I didn't realize there was no contract out there because the agenda had been out there, but it was not posted in the agenda. The contract was not there.
Well, we've had notice 15 days. And all
But
you,
that's not my
well,
responsibility.
it is your responsibility.
No, it's
All
not.
we're doing,
Mr. If I may, Mr. Chairman, they
Yes,
should
I
have
may.
provided to that. I don't have that information. Nobody has that information. If y'all have it, it's when you originally gave him the contract.
that's correct,
So 2 of us have come on board since then,
that's correct.
right? No one told me that there was a contract that was available at the director's office.
What do you think, where do you think it's stored at?
I don't know.
I'll call into question, Chairman.
Sir?
You gotta get a second first on your motion.
I mean, shouldn't that be public information? What we're paying,
It is
what
public
we're paying?
information.
So then why wasn't it included in here?
Why does it need to be included? All we're doing is extending 2 years on his existing contract.
But you're asking me and the other school board members, especially Ms. Johnson, those that are new to the board, to vote on something that we have no idea.
Well, you known about it 15 days.
No, I knew that it was on the
No, you knew
agenda.
about it 15 days. He put 15 days notice and we got notice on it.
I got this contract out of the director's office 30 minutes ago.
Mr. Chairman, you are the chairman and you're aware of where the contract is.
There's nobody on this board that I've ever told couldn't go in the director's office and ask for something.
But if you don't know that that's where to go to ask for it, what are you supposed to do? Most of the time, any contracts that we have in the agenda, any contracts that we're going to approve are in the agenda, are they not?
Well, the contract is not going to change except for the date.
But I have no idea what I'm agreeing to sign on. And neither does Ms. Johnson.
I don't know if Mr. Johnson does or not.
Well, she's welcome to speak,
I don't know if she has or not. I mean,
but that's my whole point.
the whole point is Mr. Johnson may have went and looked at it. I don't know.
Well, she's free to speak.
I've reviewed documents relative to the contract, relative to this point, yes.
Did you review the contract?
I've reviewed documents relative, and I've talked to TSBA relative to this motion. I've done my research, yes, ma'am.
I feel like the public should know about this. It was not included in our packet, and regardless if we vote on this or not, it should have been included.
Well, I respectfully disagree with that. The public was informed 15 days
The
ago.
public was informed, but there was no detail as to what was in the contract.
The only thing we're doing is asking to extend it to 2 years.
I don't know what I'm asking, what I'm signing off on.
Well, there's nothing we can say that's going to change your mind.
At least would be informed as to what I'm signing on.
Well, part of being informed is to check for yourself.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I know we have a motion on the floor in a second, so are we open for discussion? Given Ms.
we do
Ms.
have
is finished.
a motion and a second, so we're up for discussion.
Okay. I'm looking at this from, I guess, a sort of a different perspective, having been on the board for 6 years and looking back on this historically. First of all, I find it concerning that as to why we would be suggesting a contract extension this early in the game. The director's contract is not up for another 17 months. When I look back historically, at least the 2 times since I've been on the board that we extended Don Odom's contract, first of all, it was never done prior to 6 months out from the termination of or the ending of the contract itself. And I recall, too, it even being spoken by other board members, one of them being Wayne Blair, who is a a former and very highly respected school board member, pointing out the fact that we are in an election year, and there are 4 seats on this board that are up this year, and we may very well have new board members coming in September. And I remember him making the reference, and I totally agree with this, that in making a decision on a director's contract in an election year would be a disservice to any potential new board members because they don't have the opportunity to play a role in that decision. So I agree with that. And again, to extend a contract that's not up for another 17 months, I guess I'm just not quite sure what the rush is. Yeah, so anyway, thank you for allowing me to make my comments.
Well, I believe that some of our contracts have been done a year and a half in advance. Now, there's some that were not because Mr. Odom wanted a year at a time instead of 2 years at a time. So, and I assume that you're talking about one of our previous school board members that didn't think enough of our school system to put his children in it. So,
I don't know
that
what
being
you're
said,
referring to there, Mr. Chairman, I mentioned Mr. Blair was the only former school board member that I referenced.
Mr. Blair's children did be in it. So, anyone else? No one else. Ms. Michael, could you call the roll?
Mr. Jordan?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson? Yes. Mr. Hodge?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
No.
Ms. Sharp?
No.
Mr. Estes?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. All right. Get our director back. Mr. Spurlock, congratulations. 2 more years added on.
Thank you, school board.
All right. Number 6, approval of consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we've been asked to move. Oh, we've got visitors. Sorry. Like to forgot my visitor out there. All right, Mr. Andrew Kellum, you'll come up. You'll have 3 minutes. State your name, address.
Hello, my name is Andrew Kellum. I'm here to represent my parents, Daniel and Regina Kellum. They're unable to attend today's hearing due to health issues. I was asked to present to you today on their behalf. They live in the Royal Glen subdivision. Their home was one that was directly impacted by flooding back in February of last year. The Burgess Farm property floods under Highway 96 directly to the proposed property the county would like to purchase for the new schools. It then floods onto my neighbor's properties before funneling full force onto mine. With only 7 inches of water over a 3-day period, this created a raging river funneling directly to my home. Over 60 people from neighbors, family, friends, Rutherford County inmates, Christiana Volunteer Fire Department, had to fill over 600 bags of sand, 3 sump pumps to try and void the raging rivers from their home. Drone footage from that day on YouTube under Royal Glen Flooding 2019 clearly shows the impact of water issues we have in Royal Glen, and the direct path it takes is exactly where the county is wanting to put up schools. These images do not lie. It wasn't until county engineers were confronted at a meeting following Tuesday, February 26, at Overall Creek Elementary regarding the proposed 1,900 home development that they admitted they underestimated the drainage systems and the elevation of my home when developing the property. They made promises to resolve these issues, but to no avail. We are a year out with no communications at all for the past several months, as they have quit responding. Now they are proposing to build a school on the very land that floods my home. They say they are certain they can divert the rainwaters away so that it does not add to existing issues. I'm sorry if I do not believe this. You can't expect me to put faith in the same people who developed the drainage in Royal Glen and miscalculated the elevation of my home to devise a plan to prevent this, but have no answers to fix the existing problem. If raw land cannot contain these waters, how can it contain them when putting infrastructures? Your answer is it won't. The school board needs to reevaluate the decision to purchase this property. Not only will it destroy my home, but possibly many others in the neighborhood as well. There are other options for new schools that will not impact the lives of others in their homes, and is not on a 2-lane state highway with no lights, no shoulders, no turn lanes, and only a promise to widen this road at a future date. This will be disastrous, as many young people could lose their lives trying to get in and out of this school due to your vote. I'm all for growth in this community, as my livelihood depends on it. And I know my words may not be enough to persuade your vote, but it should concern you as to what is going on and make a difference in the community to take a stand. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, my parents.
Thank you, Mr. Kellum.
Thank you.
Okay. Recognition. Mr. Beaudry's going to come up and...
Yeah, Mr. Bowman.
Evening. A couple years ago, the Tennessee Comptroller, the Treasury, they created a new training program called the County Officials, the Certified County Finance Officer Training Program. Is a rigorous over 12 months of training in advanced governmental accounting and financial techniques, along with internal controls for county governments and grant management. And I'm pleased to announce that the very first accountant in Rutherford County government is in my office, and it's Miss Melanie Lanier. She just recently completed her training and passed all the final exams. And I wanted to brag on that. I've got a staff. I've got a staff of very good people, very committed, dedicated people. But when I see one that goes beyond and betters herself and brings in skills that can be used in my office, I just feel that I want to publicly recognize those people. And that's what I'm doing tonight with her certificate. So thank you, Ms. Lanier,
for taking upon yourself to better your education and be a better asset for us. You want that thing?
On the way down here, Kim and Doug stopped by and said, they're probably going to want you to say something. I gave you a lot of notice, but it is, I've been in county government and county finance for over 30 years, and I really enjoy it. I really do, and that this is an opportunity for me to learn more and to find out things that, in other offices and other aspects of county government that I would not have learned in the finance department. So I was grateful to be in the inaugural class and grateful to pass. So thank you very much. It's wonderful to be recognized by your employer. It's just like a child being appreciated by the parents. So thank you all for this tonight.
Congratulations.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, next, we're going to move number 12. discipline hearing.
Number 12, the disciplinary hearing appeal. The board has been requested to review the January 16, 2020 decision of the DHA to uphold the remandment of the student from Rock Springs Middle School. The student was remanded to the alternative school under Board Policy 6.313 for consuming a food item containing marijuana. Based on the review of the DHA's record, the board may do the following. 1, affirm the decision of the DHA. 2, overturn the decision of the DHA. 3, modify the decision to a lesser penalty. Or 4, grant a hearing before the board.
Okay, do we have a motion on that?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the moving this, first of all. And my question last night, and the director has revised this after some study, I think. But I still have I've got a problem with the food item containing marijuana. I don't believe that we know that. And it didn't, and I guess what the general public needs to know, and the fine people in this room, when we have an appeal of a discipline matter, the board gets every detail possible, I guess, for the student in question and the incident in question. And I'll ask the attorney. I talked to Ms. Page today by phone. She was told, the student in question was told that there was marijuana in this, but we don't know that. Is that fair?
Anytime we're dealing with a THC product in schools, we have to go on the weight of the evidence. Right now, we don't have an ability to field test items, and so we go on student interview. So often we are left to make a weight decision. And so in this case, the school determined that, at least is what they have here, that the student, that the item, most students said they thought it was in there. But that's up for you all on if you think that's adequate for the discipline that was provided. So.
I think, Mr. Chairman, if I may, were you done,
Please,
Mr. Jordan?
I'm not
Thank
done,
you.
but go ahead.
Okay. I have the same concerns. You know, I've read through this several times, and and there may be something perhaps that is not in the file, but I don't see where, and I can appreciate Ms. Page's point that we don't have any way to test it, but we don't have any evidence at all that there truly was marijuana or THC, whatever you want to call it, in this treat that the young lady took from another student and supposedly digested some of it. And I'm concerned also about the way the whole investigation was conducted, but we can talk about that later. But given that there's absolutely no evidence that would show that she ingested marijuana, and based on the student's statements, I have great concerns about this zero tolerance disciplinary action having been taken as well.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. My normal procedure is probably exactly the same as the other board members. Now, in this particular case, we only had 24 hours to read this information. So I read it last night, and then I read it again this morning and made notes and so forth. And I agree with everything Ms. Moore said. But I have a lot more problems than that with how this particular discipline hearing was handled at the school level. And I really appreciate these people. As a matter of fact, I know these people that were on the committee, and know one of them very well, coached her in basketball. The other two I've known for quite a while, and I have great respect for them. But I believe we came down on this youngster really, really hard. And she was 12 years old, an excellent student, and she was absolutely, I don't think there's any question, she was intimidated and perhaps said what she thought she was supposed to say. I'm not sure that that's 100% right, but I was very uncomfortable with the procedures here. With all due respect to Rock Springs and others who do this all the time, and I used to do this too when I was assistant principal, it's not easy and I wasn't there. But I'm going to make a motion, and I hope the board will go along with it. I'm going to make a motion that we do number 3 on this list right here, and that is modify the decision to a lesser penalty and send her back to Rock Springs tomorrow morning. Now, I'm assuming that she is at Smyrna West. Mr. Director, is that correct, or have you?
She is to be enrolled. She's supposed to be there. I can check with Ms. Sides to make sure she's enrolled.
Okay, well, that's my motion.
I would second Mr. Jordan's motion.
Thank you. Anybody else like to comment?
I do have, I guess, a couple of questions that were kind of on my mind, too. And I understand we're not addressing appeals from any of the other students that might have been involved in this incident, but I would like to know if anyone can tell me, because it sounds like there were several students involved. There was the student that allegedly gave out the treat to the other girls, and then I think there were 2 other female students that were in the bleachers or whatever that were offered this supposed marijuana Rice Krispie treat as well. Did we take the same action with those students? Were all of those students remanded to Smyrna West as well?
They were. The process of that, for everyone else, I think the board already knows that, is that the school makes the determination. It goes to the disciplinary hearing authority. The disciplinary hearing authority brings in the people who are impacted by it and the administrator of the school that's impacted by the decision, along with different personnel in the county. At that time, they make the decision whether to uphold it or whether to overturn it, and then it goes directly to, if their appeal comes, it goes to the board. So we would not be purview to this unless it came out of the DHA. And I say we, as in me. I looked at it, I even followed up, talked to the principal. It was articulated by all 3 individuals. I did read some of the things that were mentioned about this one individual, how she was interviewed. But all 3 individuals, or at least 2 of the 3, if I'm not, and correct me, Ms. Page, I'm sure you will if you need to, but all 3 individuals did admit or believing that they had ingested something with marijuana. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we have 2 different, and this is not to, I think you all should vote however you feel. That's the whole point, is that on this record, you make your decision. And you're right, these are hard calls. But this is more, because you may see ones like this in the future. So I want to explain kind of, there's 2 different disciplinary tracks here. There's a 0 where we have enough evidence that we believe truly a drug was ingested, okay? So that's a 0 tolerance. But we also do have a remandment, all in its own, not a 0 tolerance. That's if a student was wrong. We know they were wrong, but they believed they were taking a drug. An example that we've seen, is a student crushed up melatonin and convinced another kid that it was cocaine. That we know it wasn't cocaine. We knew it was melatonin. But because the student took it at school believing that they were going to be under the effects of a drug, they were disciplined. But it was a remandment, not a 0 tolerance. So it's a hard call for administrators because it really is a weight of the evidence. But you may see these again because they are the more complicated cases. So I didn't want to lay that out there for you all.
Okay. My question is, and I have no problem with modifying this decision. Who modifies it?
It would be by the will of the board. So whatever you all like to have done, you can make a motion and vote on, and we'll notify the student probably right away. I'll send emails tonight on whatever you all choose to do.
Anyone else? And we've got a motion and a second to go number 3, modify the decision to a lesser penalty. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Members of the board, just to clarify, you made a motion to impose a lesser penalty. Would this board like to articulate what that lesser penalty would be? So it would be to waive the discipline. Would that be I want to make sure I put it in right. Or do you expect her to go to school and have a suspension period, or would you consider what's happened a suspension period? All right, we'll just wipe the discipline, if that's in line with the motion. Okay.
Is that all right with the board? Okay. All right, we're ready for number 9.
All right, number 9, we have Mr. Greg Wyatt here from Siegel High School, is going to discuss lacrosse.
Good evening. Back last semester, Director Spurlock reached out to me with some information about lacrosse, and I will warn you guys that it's the fastest growing sport in the United States right now. Whether we start it when the TSSAA decides to do it, which is in the 21-22 school year, so it wouldn't really start. The first game would be in the spring of 2022. Whether we decide as a county to do it then or put it off, it's coming. So just to let you guys know down the road. I recently have been selected as a member of the Tennessee the TSSAA Legislative Council, and we met in in December about one of the lacrosse and where the TSSAA is with that. Right now, there's not very many schools. There's a lot of schools in Williamson County. It's really a suburban sport as of right now. Williamson County and a lot of the private schools are playing across the state. It's larger in the metro Nashville area. Murfreesboro does have a team. They fielded the team for the last 10 years, and they've won 2 state championships. So they've done well. Me personally, I've dealt with kids that have played it. They've been on my football team. I think it's a great crossover as a football sport. But where we sit right now is there are questions about, and I think one of the questions in front of you guys is coaches. I dare to say there's probably not very many people in here that have seen lacrosse on TV, much less played it or coached it in our county. In saying that, within the last week or so, I've spoke to 2 gentlemen. One who is who started the Murfreesboro Lacrosse League, and another gentleman who teaches and coaches up at Stewart's Creek that's very interested in, and he's coached lacrosse and would like to start lacrosse there. So where you guys go with that, I don't know. From the TSSAA's point of view, they're still working on officials and how they're going to be able to get officials, how they're going to divide it out in the travel, what kind of regions or districts they're going to put teams in, and that types of things. So they've got about 1.5 years to get this situated out before that happens. I'm here to answer any questions that you guys might have as far as this is concerned. I've broken down a few things. We have 10 high schools in our county. And if in talking to the people that I've talked to, 2 coaches is probably needed per sport, and that's boys and girls. Now, boys and girls both play on different fields. They're marked differently, so the game's not exactly the same between sports. There's a little bit more equipment that's involved with the boys' game than it is the girls' game. So you're talking, probably 40 total coaches in the county to possibly coach at those 10 high schools if they all 10 play. I broke that down even further in that it's very similar to soccer, and I would assume that you guys would probably pay it along the lines of a soccer supplement, which was a 12% supplement for a head coach and a 5% supplement for an assistant coach. Base payoff of 12% is $5,441. And for an assistant coach, that's for a head coach, and for an assistant coach is $2,267. So total pay for those coaches for a year would be somewhere around $155,000, which, if you look at the amount of kids that would be involved, and what I've talked to with most of the coaches, there's anywhere from 36 to 50 kids on a team. So it's a pretty good sized team. If you break it down as an average of 85 kids in your school, both boys and girls playing, that's about 850 kids in the county that would be playing. It ends up being about $181 a kid if you look at it per kid, per coach, as far as that's concerned. A few of the concerns that I have as an athletic director would be in my school would be field use, because it's a spring sport. Both boys and girls would be played in the spring. Both of those teams would have to share the school stadiums with the high school soccer teams and the middle school soccer teams and anybody else that's playing on that field. So that's a large concern as far as I'm concerned, as far as the upkeep of turf in our stadiums. Schools like Blackman and Oakland would not have any trouble with turf. I think it would be a hard thing to do without turf at your school, in my opinion. Another thing, because you also are looking for practice areas. I talked to Brentwood High School yesterday. Brentwood has it. Their track team practices at 3 o'clock. Now, lacrosse and track can't practice at the same time because those lacrosse balls fly pretty fast and they hurt when they hit somebody. And they're flying out of bounds on the track all the time. So you can't have two teams practicing at one time as far as that's concerned. So they have track that practices at 3. Their girls lacrosse team comes in at 5, and the boys lacrosse team comes in at 7 and gets done at 9 o'clock. So that's what their schedule is on their turf field. We're fortunate enough at Siegel High School that we've got a kind of an alternative field that we could put a team on, that we wouldn't have to have a team go that late. I know not all of our schools are fortunate, and they're a little landlocked, and they don't have the type of area that we have there as far as that's concerned. As an athletic director, I'm for anything that we can do to get kids in a positive environment, to be able to teach them team and how to work with other people, and life lessons that you learn on the field that you don't get out of the classroom sometimes. I'm for that. I'm for anything that we can do to try to get kids off the streets and getting them in a positive environment. In saying that, I understand there's a lot of things that goes into this. Mr. Spurlock, do you have any questions, or do you guys have any questions for me?
I think you hit it, Coach, about the facilities is a major concern.
I think it is. I think if we decide to do it, I think there has to be a partnership with our city fields and stuff like that to find places to play and practice. They're doing that right now, but they're not doing it at the scope of 20 teams in our county.
Is there middle school lacrosse? I'm assuming somewhere there is.
There is. There's a middle school lacrosse team that's formed in the county with that league, the Murfreesboro Mayhem. When I talked to the lacrosse guys here in town, I asked them how they would handle if all the high schools decided to bring lacrosse on. How would they handle it? Because I don't see the middle schools being involved in it right now. First of all, I don't know that there'd be enough interest as far as that's concerned. He told me that they would take all of their interest that they have from the high school level and put it to the middle school level in developing those kids to be ready for high school.
Mr. White?
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned earlier when you first kind of got started about the TSSAA.
Yes, ma'am.
In 21-22. So has it already been decided that it will become an official?
As of right now,
TSSAA
yes, ma'am.
sport?
It's a sanctioned TSSAA sport. They're going to start in 21-22.
Okay.
We have a meeting in March, and they might be backtracking a little bit and pushing it out a little bit further, possibly. I'm not real sure right now. That's just the scuttlebutt I've kind of heard through talking to Board of Control members on the TSSAA and other legislative council members.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay?
And if I may, Mr. White, was the $155,000, how many coaches was that for?
That would be for 40 coaches. That would be two per sport, boys and girls, at each of the 10 high schools. That's at today's supplement rate. So that would be off of a first year's teacher's pay, or, well, that's what it's based off anyway. That's, yes, sir, Bachelor in 5.
We ran into some problems, and I'll point them out. And I think you're certainly fully aware of one of them. And that is that this board, at least 5 of them, including myself, we were not able, and I'm just reliving history here.
Sure.
We were not able to get supplement increase for a whole bunch of high school coaches.
Correct, yes, sir.
And now you're telling me $155,000 for a sport that we don't even have.
You're adding 4 per school if that's what you choose to do.
Right.
If you model it after soccer, and I'm assuming that that would be the route to go, being that they're probably the closest as far as the amount.
I'm not disagreeing with that at all. That
Right.
will be right. I think, though, you're going to have to agree with me here. When we ran into this problem with other sports, when we started on the high school level, it didn't take the middle schools long till they wanted the same thing, and they wanted a head coach and an assistant coach. And we got 11 of those, I think. So you see my problem.
I understand that completely.
I'm not against lacrosse.
No, I understand that. I know exactly what you're saying,
Okay.
Mr. Jordan. I do. I agree. And I'm not up here pushing lacrosse either. I mean, I want you to know I'm for anything that we can do to get kids off the streets. Of course, I'm an athletic guy. I grew up in it. You know what I'm saying? You did. You understand. You know, and there is. I mean, I had a parent tell me one time, you're either going to pay for it now or you're going to pay for it later, one way or the other. You're going to pay for keeping them out of trouble, or you're going to pay for them when they get into trouble. And that's kind of the way I look at athletics. So.
And I look at it almost exactly the same way.
Right,
I will point out that we have 17 sports in many of our schools that the students, but I understand.
Correct, yes, sir.
And I need to say too publicly that just because the TSSAA sanctions it as a sport, that they cannot require us to do it.
No, sir, they cannot, no.
Okay.
No, you don't have to do it.
Right.
But it's going to be more and more popular. I don't know that it's popular enough now in our county to be able to, and the way I'm seeing it, and this is from my eyes and my point of view and talking to the people, is that we're probably going to end up having to co-op teams. In other words, an Oakland and a Siegel are going to have to put a team together to be able to play, or maybe 3 high schools to start out with, if that's what you guys choose to do. I might suggest that, if you start a team, then we'll fund the coaches for that. But if you don't have a team, we're not paying the supplements. In other words, they're not going to go somewhere else,
Coach, what's the, sorry.
No, I was just thinking.
Coach, what's the feeling on the TSSAA on rugby? It's been out for a long time.
I don't think they want anything to do with it.
That's what I'm wondering, because we do have those we do have
club rugby in town, but I don't think they want anywhere. I think it goes into a catastrophic insurance deal with rugby, just like it would be with football. Now, I'm probably speaking out of turn in that, but that's the way that I would see it, Mr. Spurlock.
Do we have any schools here in our county that have expressed an interest in this?
I think there's a lot of kids throughout our county. I know Stewart's Creek is ready to go. They've got a coach ready to go. He would find somebody else. The question being is, too, now, and this is something that I don't know that the TSSAA's really looked at a whole lot of. We may have interest in boys lacrosse, but you may not have enough interest in girls lacrosse. Well, you can't do that in a high school because you get into a Title IX problem then. And nobody wants that, So in turn is, if I've got enough people at Siegel, enough boys at Siegel that want to play, but I can't garner enough for girls, I'm putting myself in a liability problem there. So.
They wear helmets?
Boys do, girls don't. Girls wear goggles.
Okay. You know why I'm asking?
Yeah. But concussion-wise and injury-wise, it rates below both football and soccer. So.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
number 10.
Our number 10, we're substituting a middle-level ELA textbook adoption committee. We're requesting that David Bonilla from Whitworth Buchanan serve as the 7th grade representative of the middle-level ELA textbook adoption committee. Mr. Bonilla will replace Heather Crane from Whitworth Buchanan, who resigned for personal reasons. A motion to approve David Bonilla as a representative for the middle-level textbook adoption as presented.
Comments or questions? Have a motion?
Move we approve, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Highway 96.
All right, Highway 96 property. Upon further review of the Highway 96 property consisting of 154 acres owned by the city of Murfreesboro, the parcel continues to appear to be suitable for 2 school site and to be a good location for a multi-school site. Staff recommends the Board of Education proceed with proposing contract to the city of Murfreesboro for the purchase of the property. The contract would be contingent upon the Board of Education receiving test results satisfactory to the Board of Education and approval of the purchase by the Rutherford County Commission. Funding for the purchase would be from the remaining funds approved by the County Commission for the purchase of future school sites. Execution of a contract will allow testing to proceed on the property, and the contract would provide for an inspection period during which the Board of Education can terminate if the results of the testing or further study of the property are not acceptable to the board. Mr. Lee, would you also inform the board about the form that we have to have approved by the commission as we go along with these tests?
Yes, sir. The county commission instituted in June of this past year. It's a land purchase form. It's basically a checklist. Check the box. Do you have this? Do you have that? Some of this is basically used for closing purposes. Do you have your do you have your geotechnical reports? Do you have this? And all this stuff has to be attached to it. Our intention would be, if this was to move forward, is we would go ahead and present this form at the Health and Ed meeting with as many boxes checked with the information that we have at this time. And then if the test results were to come back positive and we were to close, then we would take all these additional reports and attach it when we go back to them for final approval.
One other question. In the motion, there is a price of $28,500 per acre. Can you go through and tell me how that number was determined?
Mr. Estes basically called me one day and asked me what I thought was a fair price. I've talked to 2 or 3 real estate folks, because I am not one, and all of them said in this area, somewhere in the $28,000 to $30,000 range would be an expected price. I went back and reviewed most all of our property, except for most all of our property that we've purchased all the way back to Brown's Chapel, except for the Tan Oaks property, has been 30 or over. So based on what I could see was going on around this area, and there again, I'm not an expert. That's why we hired Mr. Johnny Sullivan, and I'll have that report on Monday. But $28,500 we felt was a fair price.
Mr. Lee, can you tell me if there are any entities other than Rutherford County Schools that are interested in purchasing this property?
Yes, sir, there are.
Can you tell me what kind of entities they are?
They're developers.
Who are they? Who are they? The names of the developers?
Ma'am?
Who are the developers?
Well, the last one I talked to, if you'll hold on just a second, I wasn't quite prepared. Let me pull this up. This gentleman was the last one that I talked to. Andy Schultz with the Coin Group out of Bowling Green, Kentucky. He reached out to us this week. He was willing to, he said they'd like to purchase the property and then gift an acreage back to us to build a school. When I mentioned to the gentleman that it was basically the size of the property and that we were looking at putting 2 schools on it, didn't leave any additional property, for that kind of a deal to work. And basically left it with him that, if something changed or we decided to build 1 school or the board decided to go a different route, I'd let him know. They're presently building, I'd never heard of them. I asked him what they did and where they were from. And he said they're presently building an apartment complex next to Salem, Salem Creek, the new city school. They're building the big, large apartment complex right next to that school. That they're the developer of that land. So these were the last folks that I talked to.
And who was the second one?
Andy Schultz with the Coin Group, Koin Group, out of Bowling Green, Kentucky. The name of their firm is Bowling Green Realty.
And Mr. Lee, you mentioned there was another one, that there was more than one.
Yeah, and this gentleman called last week, didn't give his name, just wanted to know if we'd be interested in partnering on selling a portion or if we needed it all, and I told him no.
Okay, back to this one, the Coin Group. I'm still not sure I completely understand what you were trying to lay out for us there. Why would what is their motivation behind wanting to purchase property and then give it back to us to build schools? What was the contingency? Because there had to have been something.
Their contingency is we're a developer's dream. If we build a school, the houses sell themselves. It happens everywhere we go. Look at Rocky Fork. We just started that. We opened those 2 schools, and those homes are selling before they ever get them finished. And it's been that way ever since we've been building schools here.
So is this Coin Group by chance one of the developers that have been talked to already about discussions about developing residential properties over across the street?
I have no idea. I can't answer that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Sure.
There's a lot of concern, and we talked about this last night, about the drainage there on the Royal Glen subdivision. I had an opportunity to talk to several county commissioners about this. I spoke to one today who questioned or recommended that maybe we would be a good community partner and that if there was any possibility that we could work with the county to maybe help relieve some of that flooding in this process. I know that's a burden, a financial burden, obviously, but could we consider looking at some kind of reprieve? I know we're going to do a little, but is there any way that we can maybe work with the county to at least start that conversation?
I've already spoken with Mike Hughes today. In fact, he reached out to me to go, hey, can you, I'm bouncing ideas, and Mike Hughes is the county planning stormwater guy, and he reached out to me today. We've been bouncing ideas back and forth off of each other, and he will ask for permission to speak to our engineers. And I basically told Mike that we're going to be talking to them. We don't have a design yet. We haven't done enough testing to know where we want to put everything. Once that testing is done, found to be acceptable during that time frame, we would be doing preliminary design. Those designs would be going to TDEC and also going to the county. Like when we built Rocky Fork, we had to overbuild our ponds to take care of the property upstream, the water that actually flowed across us that wasn't our water. The majority of this problem is a twofold problem. The subdivision was built in a low spot, and the water is coming from the property across the street. That's it in a nutshell. So basically the only way to help them is to retain some of that water and slow it down. And we're looking at that with the county and TDEC to see what we can do within financial constraints to help it. we would definitely not make it any worse.
Right. One other question, and I know it's probably going to be hard to determine how our building plan moves over the next 5 years, but a time frame for middle school to high school. We're not building two schools at the same time. What would be our delay?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, we are looking at two middle schools that are already overcrowded. Blackman Middle is 1,605, and Rockville Middle, is it 1,201? 1277. And then we're looking at currently, now this how this all plays into it. Currently, we're probably going to put a portable over at Stewart's Creek Elementary because it's growing, which means those kids in the next year or so are going to go to the middle school. So if we were looking at a building program, the first thing that would go there, without question, would be a middle school. Now, we've also talked, I know we threw out a high school, and that's, quite frankly, I'm going to be honest with you, it could be an elementary school. Because we currently are at capacity or over capacity at Blackman Elementary. We will be reaching capacity pretty soon at Browns Chapel Elementary, and we're already over capacity at Stewart's Creek Elementary. So it's kind of like, where is it going to strike first?
Well, Rockville also is.
Yeah, Rockville. I didn't
Elementary
mention
is
them. I
also-
left them out of that equation.
It's kind of the worst of, we've got our fingers stuck in a lot of holes in the dam, and which one's going to hit there first?
So it could likely be an elementary school that we build there.
There's a very real possibility in the next 2 to 3 years, even with the building of the elementary at 10 Oaks, which should help Rockville some, that there is a very real possibility that it may be an elementary.
One of the things that I think previously that the city had discussed building an elementary school in that area, but then they chose another site, I guess it's Salem.
Yes.
That's kind of could impact anything in the future too.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of conversation back and forth, and that crystal ball is, I wish we had it. It would help us all. We'd be able to forecast this a whole lot better. But we're saying a middle school and a high school, but it very, very well could revert to a middle and an elementary.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, if there's no other questions, I want to make a statement here. This is one of the hardest decisions to make because you realize that you're caught in a rock and a hard spot. You've got schools that are overcrowding, and we've got an unfortunate situation that the county has maybe created or participated in a subdivision flooding. This has been the hardest decision for me to make. I've done my research, so I'd like to share with some of you what I've done. I've reached out to Representative Charlie Baum's office. He helped me connect with TDOT to discuss the progress that's being made on Highway 96 and gave me a time frame for that. A lot of these documents I'll make available to whomever might be interested, as well as TDEC. My question about TDEC was, does TDEC have any information currently on that property? And they said, no, they don't. They said there is an adjoining piece of property that has had some water issues. They didn't quite call it wetlands, I don't believe. I've got some language, but I won't bore you with it. They did assure me that they would work with us and they would ensure that the ground is feasible, just like you've said. And no disrespect to Mr. Lee or the central office staff. I just believe that it's important as a board member to do my due diligence and go beyond just my friends or social media or whoever else is talking out there. I've also spoken to multiple county commissioners, Commissioner Reed, Blair. I spoke with Mr. Dodd, Commissioner Dodd today, Stevens, Allen. Everybody has said not the best situation, but it's favorable. We will support this. Mr. Dodd or Commissioner Dodd had some very interesting information to add to the conversation. He said that a developer would likely love this property. It's in a good location. He said that the optics would be awful, and he agreed that it's a tough decision that we're going to have to make here. Commissioner Gurley wanted more information, and I 100% agreed with his position. One of the things that's been questioned is why the rush? I wasn't here on the board when they went through the previous system and going to the county commission and going to the bond market. But I can tell you from the moment that the board got the information that they were considering property to visiting the property to making a decision to go to the bond market was 4 days and 1 hour. This process, when we vote on it tonight, will have taken 50 days to get here tonight. 50 days. There's no rush in that. To me, I think this is a huge injustice to continue to kick the can down the road for our students. I checked with Mr. Lee on the time frame, and it's going to be, what was it, 16 months is ideal for a middle school, 11 if we expedite it.
Ideally, 16 to 17 months. We built Rocky Fork Middle in 11 months. I don't like it. It cost us more money. At that time, the labor market was in a little better shape than it is right now. There's just not, to expedite it in 11 months, I'm not real sure that we could do it. So 15 to 16 months. We could do it in a little shorter, though.
Thank you. In addition, I have spoken to people in the community about the concerns about the wetlands. I looked at the EPA website. Wetlands and the study of them and their use in academics is actually kind of favorable. We can learn a lot from studying wetlands, potentially. Not that it's the most ideal situation, but it gives our students access. Furthermore, if you look, and I inquired with Mr. Lee, we have several schools in our campus, in our system, that have wetlands, that have some kind of drainage or flooding, that we're not able to use that land. So in all, we have a lot of land that's unusable. I think there's 59 acres at Rockville Middle, Rockville High that is completely unbuildable. I mean, if you're out there, it's rock. Maybe we can use it for something, and it's on a high school. And so I hope that the high school will utilize it as Riverdale has done or as some of our other high schools have done. But the point I'm making is that there's a lot more to the story than what we're hearing on social media. There's a lot more to the story than the arguments have been made. And I do not believe that it might not be the best decision. It might have lots of problems. But to enter into a contract contingent on inspections, I think is a favorable decision for us. And just like we did at the Christiana property, or the 840 Almaville property, we were under a contract, correct? And then it didn't pan out and we got out of that contract?
That is correct.
Last time we were out there?
Yes, ma'am.
That same thing will happen here.
Yes, ma'am.
Tough decision, but there's a lot more to the story, and I'm happy to share the information that I've received. But I don't see that there's another option for us at this point.
Anyone else? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Well, he needs to read the recommended approval first.
Yeah.
All right, motion to authorize and approve the chairman signing a contract for purchase of the Highway 96 parcel from the city of Murfreesboro consisting of approximately 154 acres at a price of $28,500 per acre in a form approved by Jeff Reed as the board attorney, and which provides an inspection period and contingencies for approval by the county commission and further Board of Education approval after testing is concluded.
I move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Ms. Michaels, would you call the roll?
Yes.
No.
Mr. Hodge?
Yes.
Ms. Sharp?
No.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Jordan?
Yes.
Mr. Estes?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, now 13, policy adoptions. You're just going to read the number tonight.
Yes, sir. Okay. Policy changes, policy 1.703, policy 1.806, policy 1.802, policy 3.201, policy 3.500, policy 3.600, policy 4.100, Policy 4.201, Policy 4.501, Policy 4.6041, Policy 4.606, Policy 6.404, Policy 6.300, Policy 6.309, Policy 6.402, Policy 6.600, Policy 6.603, Policy 4.211, Policy 4.604, Policy 5.602. Motion to approve the above changes as recommended by the Policy Committee on the second reading.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Kittrell Elementary.
Kittrell Elementary PTO approval found on tab 3. Parents and administrators at Kittrell Elementary have come together and completed the necessary steps to form the PTO. This will be a school-led PTO. The group is requesting formal recognition from the board to conduct business. Motion to approve the Kittrell Elementary PTO.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, ma'am. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Facilities?
There are no facilities used approved for exemption on this month or this board meeting.
Okay. What about Christiana Middle?
16, Facilities tab 4, Christiana Middle. Dr. Hastings has submitted a request to partner with Wilson Bank and Trust to replace the school sign inserts. The school is requesting to install a digital sign similar to the other schools throughout the county. Wilson Bank will be donating a large portion of the funds, and the school will be adding approximately $8,300. Engineering has reviewed the request and finds it consistent with the school sign partnerships. Motion to approve Christiana Middle's request to partner with Wilson Bank and Trust to purchase the new LED sign.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Blackman High.
Blackman High, Dr. Justice has submitted a request to install an enclosure for the use of the custodial staff for covered storage. This enclosure will be at no cost to the board. Engineering and construction has reviewed and request and finds the location and the materials acceptable. Motion to approve Blackman High School's request to install a covered enclosure as shown.
Have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Financial, Mr. Beaudry.
No update from last night except to state that when we close the books for the month, next week, that I will have the financial statements emailed to all of you for your review.
Thank you. Insurance?
No additional updates from last night.
Thank you, ma'am. Director's update?
Yeah, this is the school board appreciation week. It just so happens we got some very skilled people at Oakland High School in our mechatronics program. I got to see a sign and I said, you know what, that would look nice for our school board. So if Mr. Lenny Saletti would come up and probably need some assistance, or do you need some assistance, Mr. Saletti?
Everybody's gonna have their own, then I'll just kind of leave them up here for you guys to enjoy.
Mr. Slady, can you kind of take us through how they create this with the CNC machine?
Yes, sir. What they do is, we have a program, so we have a 4x8 machine. It uses plasma to cut through steel. We can go up to 1-inch steel and go through it. And students sit down and learn a bunch of different computer-aided drafting, and they're able to take whatever image they want, create their own. So one of my top students, he made this entire image for you guys and blast them out. And then they go through and polish them up. And it takes them about an hour to sand each one. So there's a lot of blood, sweat, and time behind some of these videos. Just one of the small things that they do there, help improve their skills and get them out. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, and I'd also like to thank Mr. Brian Lewis and Ms. Tyra Pilgrim for providing the machine for that program, so we thank you.
And the students.
Absolutely. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, if I may, does your department sell those to raise money? Okay, so for the public, y'all, they've got some great product here.
Absolutely. One other thing, on February the 10th, and I did get to see some of our business partners here tonight. They've left, but we appreciate them being here. On February the 10th at Rocky Fort Middle School at 6 o'clock, we're going to be having a town hall there where we're going to have our business partners with us, and we're going to be talking about careers. Principals, if you hear this, we need you to get your parents out. There's a lot of great information that's going to be provided as we go through, and I will applaud our CTE department with some of the connections that have been made, and we're trying to show that there are different trajectories for success for our students, and we want to make sure, when you look at education is a finite amount of time, but career is also, it goes forever. So we want to make sure that we're doing our best to prepare our kids to grasp tomorrow's opportunities. Today, we prepare them. Tomorrow becomes today, and so on, because we're constantly changing.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Ms. Johnson, Tennessee Legislative Network.
Nothing this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Sharp?
Mr. Chairman, I've been busy this week preparing for our trip. Starting Sunday, after our arrival, we'll have pretty much a full day of conference Sunday and Monday. So I'll fly in early that morning and we'll have a full day of conference Sunday and Monday. On Tuesdays, we have currently on the books meetings with Senators Alexander and Blackburn. We also have meetings with Congressman Desjardins, David Kustoff, Chuck Fleisman, Steve Cohen, and John Rose. And today I was working on meeting with our local Congressman Mark Green, because he has some duties on Tuesday that have to do with the State of the Union, so he's not available to meet with us. So that's another thing that we're going to do. I'll probably do that Wednesday with the group that's left. There's 19 of us from east to west Tennessee that are going to be representing the state of Tennessee.
So it's going to be your job to talk them into doing the right thing.
Yes, yes. So it's a good group, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be exciting.
Good luck. Thank you. General discussion? No general discussion. We're adjourned.